Uh, I have with me our two esteemed panelists. Let me quickly introduce them. Uh, we have Maitreyee. Yeah,
Hi, everybody.
you. Now, Maitreyee is Vice President, Human Resources at Bridgenext. And she's a veteran in human resources domain and has worked with several organizations before joining this Bridgenext. Very happy to have you here, Maitreyee, and warm welcome to you.
Thank you, Vibhas. And likewise, I'm been I think on an online panel after a while, so I'm really enjoying this part, right from our discussions to today.
Right. Thank you. And our second panelist is Hemant Zunjarrao. Hemant is Senior Vice President at Evolent International. And before Evolent, he also had stints at Accenture and Capgemini. Again, has industry experience of almost 25 years. So very warm welcome to Hemant as well. Happy to have you here and thanks for accepting our invitation.
Thanks, Vibhas, and appreciate the invite. I think this topic is very close even after spending 25 years in the industry, and I'm sure it is close to you. So
Yes.
appreciate the invite and getting us on the call.
Right, right. And myself, I'm Vibhas Joshi. I work for Pragati Leadership. I've been in the industry for, I think, 35 years now, and happy to moderate this session. And the session is going to be in the form of questions to both our panelists, and we will hear insights from their own experience, and I'm sure that will be value add to all of you. Towards the end of the session, we will keep some time, 5 to 10 minutes open for questions from the audience. So you can keep noting your questions that you may have while we are discussing. And then towards the end, Hemant, Maitreyee, and if even I can, respond to all your questions. Yeah. So let's start, our discussion. So Maitreyee, first question I want to ask you. What are the significant changes you think one needs to implement while stepping into the role of FTM?
Okay, so this seems like a motherhood kind of a question, because I think lots of changes we see while one needs to really step into the role of an FTM. So first of all, I want to take a step back and just so that we are all aligned on this topic of FTM, right? So it's a first time manager, and I think almost everybody would agree that most companies have either a formal or an informal program when participants move from individual contributor role to the first time manager role. And I think companies that are doing a significant investment and a very focused approach to this, I think we'll find that their first time managers tend to be a lot more successful than if we just treat these, as just a regular progression. And the reason I'm saying this is because this progression, according to me, is a very significant progression and more significant than some of the other progressions that are there, below, as you move from, let's say, an associate to an engineer to a senior engineer or to a lead, and as well as from manager to senior manager to director and so on.
Right.
This particular shift, I think, is one of the key shifts that happen, which actually tend to impact the entire company, tend to impact the entire culture of the company, and a lot in terms of people practices. And I'm saying this from an HR perspective, as an HR practitioner who sits, and is able to see how the first time managers really sort of warm up into their roles.
Right.
So if you were to see, most typical inputs would be in terms of competencies such as time management, delegation, team building, motivation, conflict handling, etc. So these are the significant changes that really the incumbents of this role are asked to start looking at, because they're now going to be managing a team. But I think there are two things which are very, very critical and which are very important in terms of changes that happen. And I think that really we need to be very mindful of when we step into this role. The first is the mindset shift. And I say this because it's not just about moving from an individual contributor into suddenly starting managing a team, but it's more of assuming a leadership role where your circle of influence is now really broadened
Yeah.
from an individual contributor to many different stakeholders. You have to start thinking at the next level. There are many other radars on you as you take up this role. So really, it's a mindset shift that you have to start thinking at a very different level.
Right.
And the second thing I think is very important is, in many ways, I think of this as a family. So when you move from an individual to, let's say, take on a partner or have kids, you start doing things in a different way because you're more responsible to now a larger set of people than just yourself. So I think if this mindset shift really happens, everything else which I mentioned before, like your delegation, team building, motivation, all of that will actually fall in place.
Absolutely.
So this is what I think, two of the most important changes that one needs to implement while stepping into this role.
Very true, very true. So excellent insights, Maitreyee. One thing I also noticed, what many people struggle to do is they continue to think, as you said, in their minds as individual contributors. And that shift, that now I'm no longer an individual contributor and my success is through my team. That change in the mind and the attitude needs to happen, which is so crucial. Thank you so much, Maitreyee. Hemant, I would like to ask you now, while Maitreyee outlined, what needs to happen during the change, what in your experience can go wrong during the transition from an individual contributor to being a first-time manager? What can go wrong?
Sounds good. I'll just touch up a bit on the last question that Maitreyee kind of answered, and then I'll kind of weave that into the question that you asked about this.
Yeah.
So I think we kind of talked about, like, this is one of the significant shift in your career, right? So I think there are two significant shifts once you start getting into a management role and once you start getting into a leadership role, right? And those are two major pivots that you will have. And I think there was a old adage that I once heard, and it always stuck with me. If you want to do something that you have never done before, you must be willing to do things that you have never done before, right? So it's like, hey, you're trying to get somewhere which you have not been before. So you have to have a willingness to do things that you have never done before. Having said that, I'll kind of answer the question directly. What can go wrong during the transition from IC to FTM? I think it's simple things go wrong. I think the first thing I would say is individuals trying very hard to prove themselves that they belong there as a manager, right? So it's very natural. It's very natural to human. It comes like, hey, you want to prove yourself. This is my space, and people have trust in me, and things like that, right? So trying very hard to prove yourself is the first thing that can generally go wrong, and that causes a lot of things, right? It causes excessive stress for you, for many reasons. Like sometimes you think that there may be a perceived lack of impact that I'm making as a manager. You may not believe that I'm making an impact, or you may have a feeling that someone is judging you and you're not kind of up to the mark, and you're coming up short, right? So I think the first thing that generally goes wrong is individual trying very hard to prove themselves.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say is the trust issues. I think Maitreyee talked about, or Vibhas, you kind of talked about saying, even after moving from IC to a first-time manager, you still try to think like an IC or individual contributor. And what happens is the trust, when you think of the trust issue, you have to start trusting the teams going forward in your new role. But then you sometimes come up short to it and you keep on doing the work that you're supposed to do, or that the team is supposed to do, and you kind of keep doing that work. So that trust issue kind of comes into place. Like, do I have the trust? Do I trust my entire team to produce the deliverables that is supposed to be done, versus you doing it yourself or helping out the team in doing that? And the third thing I would say is not focusing on relationship building. I think that's a very underrated, undervalued aspect of the characteristics that most of the first-time managers don't focus on. You can't really undervalue that aspect, because as you get into a first-time manager role, there are several things that comes into play. You have to wear different hats. There's an organizational dynamics that comes into picture. So focusing on that, building the relationship, not just the stakeholder management, even your peers, even your teams, even your bosses, even outside of your network, right? So building that relationship is something that can go wrong, or folks don't really focus on that. So I think those are 2, 3 things, basic ones, I would say, that can go wrong.
Great, great, Hemant. Those are lovely insights. Your last one that you mentioned is so true. Many times what happens is delivering, business results is the primary motive of any organization. But what sometimes, the first-time managers may not realize is now I have to deliver business results, yes, but it is through my team. And therefore, strong connection and relationship that you mentioned is so very vital. And it requires investment of time. It doesn't happen, by magic. So unless I'm consciously start devoting time to that activity of connecting with my stakeholders, including my team, it doesn't happen automatically. And that's where I feel, one of the things that goes wrong is people don't invest enough time in relationship building when you transition, and you are so focused on yourself delivering value, and like you said, proving yourself. And you forget that I need to now allocate time for relationship building, which is as vital. Great, Hemant. Thanks.
You need to be intentional about it, is what I say.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
I think also the trust part that Hemant mentioned is very, very important.
Yes.
And it's very close to my heart, because I think I would say the one thing that can go wrong is if holders of this role tend to feel, okay, now I'm a powerful person because now I have teams reporting to me and I've suddenly become a manager. Whereas actually, so that can go really wrong if they take the role in the wrong sense of saying, okay, this is a power thing. It's not really a power thing. It's really about building that trust and relationships with the team, because end of the day now, in fact, it's the whole team that's going to deliver successfully rather than just you. So I think building that trust really is one of the foundations of, I would say, of, taking on this role.
Great, Maitreyee. I think you said it's not the power thing, but it's the empower thing,
Yes, exactly. Yeah, rightly said. Yes.
Right.
The trainer in you.
All right. So, Maitreyee, I'll ask the next question again to you. And of course, Hemant can contribute as well. We say a lot of things, the first-time managers need to do this and first-time managers need to do that. What, in your view, the organization should do for the development of these first-time managers?
That's a good question. And I think I have some, good experiences there, because I have, worked with some good learning and training partners. Together, we have been able to really do formal as well as informal things as an organization to sort of support the first-time managers getting into the role. So one, I definitely believe that first-time managers need a focused approach. And therefore, they need tools and techniques, and these tools and techniques can come in various ways. It could come through training programs, it could come through learning initiatives, it could come through on the job training. But I definitely think the one key thing that an organization can provide in terms of support is a lot of tools and techniques, because these are the hygiene things that actually help the managers start becoming effective in their roles as first time managers. So I would say simple things like I mentioned, right? These managers are dealing with, for example, so far they were just looking at their own time, but now they are looking at the time, their own time, the team's time, and how efficiently everybody is delivering. If there are conflicts on the team, they're having to spend extra time and effort on dealing with those conflicts. They have to also learn the art of delegation, where now they have to start moving away work from them to people who can actually handle that work. So each one of these, if you look at it, it's a very critical activity.
Yeah.
And if they're not done in time and properly, can actually result in quite a lot of problems in the team. And then obviously will impact the efficiency of the team, how the team is delivering, overall team culture, how engaged and motivated the team is, all of that, right? So I think the first thing is, as an organization, a lot of tools, tips, and techniques need to be given to these people to support them in. That's the one thing. The second thing I would say is, and I'm talking about all of this besides formal training to participants on first time. I'm a big believer in that, in at least for this particular level, where some of these competencies are new to these players, and they have to start understanding what is, for example, what is the meaning of delegation.
Right.
Delegation does not mean, for example, picking up my piece of work and just giving it to 4 people. That's not delegation, right? But unless you tell them what is the meaning of delegation, readiness to receive, readiness to give, how the task is going to be performed, which people will you give, and therefore which people on the team you're measuring by different yardsticks. All of that is a part of delegation. It's not just about handing off work. So I'm a believer in this first time managers. I think some formal input, first of all, has to be given. And as an organization, I think tips and techniques and tools for the managers to use should be provided so that they are able to measure themselves how effectively they are playing that role. It's a yardstick for themselves also. And I think the last thing I would like to say in this is definitely having a mentor attached to every first time manager where they are able to go to that person at any point of time when they are in doubt, when they have a situation they cannot handle, when they just want to bounce off thoughts. I think having that mentor who has been through that journey in the company and in the organization, these, I think, two, three things are very, very important. And I think, I'm sure Hemant will have, from the delivery perspective, some other important things as well. But I think as an HR practitioner, these are the things I've seen that have worked.
Great, great. Yeah. Hemant, you want to?
One thing, if I can add, I think relating it back to the first question, we started talking about the mindset shift, right? So that this is a mindset shift. It's not a mindset shift just for the individuals. It's also a mindset of the organization, right? How are you looking at the first time managers as? They are your future leaders. They are your cultural ambassadors of the future, right? Are you going to be intentional as an organization to focus and develop them, right? So sometimes training is a checklist. People do that, and like some organizations have that. But it's truly, if you have a mindset as an organization that is my responsibility, I need to be intentional about developing the future leaders for my organization, you will do things right, right? And Vibhas, I think you are a good example. When Evolent started thinking about it and we started doing it, I think your firm was the one that actually helped us define that how should we look at first time manager, and we kind of did the role. So training is piece of it, sure. I think organizational mindset is equally important in my mind. I think you covered the mentor coach and bunch of other things that you can do along that training part.
Yeah. Great, great. Yeah. I think that mentor part that you mentioned is very crucial. And again, many times may get ignored because again, it's a toll on the bandwidth of a senior. And many organizations are reluctant to devote that bandwidth to, again, mentoring your juniors, and you say, okay, they will learn on the job. And we'll leave it, they will figure it out. Versus having a mentor when required is a great thing, and it requires conscious investment. And that's why, Hemant, what you mentioned, the organizational mindset also needs to change, not just the first time managers mindset. Yeah, great insights. Maitreyee talked about the time demands on the first time manager, Hemant, and therefore I'll ask you the next question, which is, suddenly, it appears to the first time manager organization is demanding a lot from me now. My life as a IC was probably happier. I had to perform myself. Now, you are demanding I perform, my team performs, and I'm accountable for everything. And suddenly so many things on my plate, and my time management may go for a toss. And plus I have my personal life too. How do you think, that balance should be achieved by a first time manager?
It's a real tough one. To be honest, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. In fact, sometimes we joke that, hey, please give me a demotion with a pay hike. So go back instead of thinking of going forward. But that's a tough one. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. It's a very natural phenomenon. It's going to be a consistent challenge, and the challenge only aggravates as you grow in your career, right? So if you're thinking that first time manager is your biggest challenge with the work-life balance, it's not. It's actually just keeps going as you kind of go up the ladder. So I don't know if I'm going to have a very clear answer, but I'll give you the answer that I practice, because I don't think there's a bookish answer for this one. I think over a period of time, I realized that I need to have clarity for myself on what is important to me, right? Sometimes developing that clarity took a long time for me. The definition of importance of what is important for me personally took a while for me to kind of realize that. So I think the first thing that you need is a clarity in your mind is what is important, because that's going to drive your how firm you're going to be in your decision making in whatever you decide, whether it is important or not. And the other thing I would say is once you have a clarity that this is important for me, you have to prioritize that, what is important to you personally, and don't negotiate on that, right? It in a period of time, I think we keep on working for like what, 25, 30 years over a period of time, the work will never end. The priorities will never go away. It is always going to be there, but then you kind of uh, block the area where you need the personal importance, and that's like, hey, be firm on it, saying, hey, this is my need, I cannot deviate from it, and be open about it with your seniors, with your peers, with your team members, and things like that, so that they understand your rationale and that they also understand that it is important for you. So I would say getting the clarity for yourself, what's important, communicate that, be firm on that, and also provide the rationale of why it is important.
Yeah. Maitreyee also, I think, wants to say something.
I mean, it's amazing how I have actually wanted to say the exact same thing. That I was just going to say it's a very big learning curve. And frankly, I don't know whether, especially now is a big learning curve. And like Hemant rightly said, the curve doesn't stop. It only goes upwards. But since this is the beginning, it's really a big learning curve. And it is extremely important if you want to grow, in your career progression. It is important that this part, it definitely plays a critical part of your working day. But I think it is so very important to have your own priorities set and clarity of thought in what you wanted to do. And in my own example, for me, health has always been extremely important. So um, along with balancing this, I have always, said that because health is important, um, in the working day, whatever happens, but I will set aside that 1 hour for myself. And come what may, there have been weeks where we have, of course, worked probably over the weekends when there have been some projects going on. And people have called me crazy, but I have gone for a run at 10:30 in the night just because I was very clear that I definitely wanted to, spend that 1 hour. And I've come back and worked for the next 2 hours, probably submitting some reports or whatever it is. But that 1 hour for myself has really helped me to, I would say it has helped me to stay focused, stay calm, and I think also definitely impacted my productivity. So I would say one or two such things, as long as you balance, you cannot balance everything in life. It is hard as you grow up, but it is very important to have that clarity. And thanks, Hemant, for touching on that point, because I think it is a very important point, especially for this at this point where people are going to move up that, from now on, if they start making it a practice, I think it will, remain as a practice through their later years as well.
Very true. I think these are awesome insights. And I think the word clarity is so important. And I think, Hemant, as you mentioned, the clarity has to be about what you need to do and what you need not do. Sometimes we are so attached to so many things, it is hard for us to let go of things. And in the process, we try to do too many things. And then, we say we are struggling. We are struggling because I think as you mentioned, we are not devoting time to identify the clarity and prioritization and be ruthless about it. That, these are the things I need to do. These are important. Like Maitreyee, you mentioned on personal front, the health part, the staying fit. Because if you're not fit, you cannot lead. It's as simple as that. So right. I have to be fit to, demand fitness from others and mental and physical levels. So very true. I think clarity and prioritization, I think, as you mentioned, Hemant, are the key things one needs to keep in mind while balancing this, dilemma of personal and professional life. And I don't normally like to call it work-life balance, because what it means is work is outside of life many times, the terminology.
Yeah.
Work is part of life. It's personal life and professional life. We need to manage as per our prioritization and be very clear about it, as Hemant said. Great, Hemant. So thanks for those insights. Just give me a sec. I think the next question, I'm going to ask again Hemant, and of course Maitreyee will add too. Hemant, how do you measure the success of a first-time manager? Now that you have moved into a new role, the measures of success also will change from that of an IC, right? How do you measure the success?
Do you have some of the tougher questions, just so you know? There's no framework to measurement of success, but I think we need to understand. First, I think it's important to understand the role of first-time manager, and then that you can relate it back to how do you want to measure that role, right? So if you and the role will the technicalities of the role depend and will change based on the industry, based on the company that you work. But there's some basic things that remains to be constant as part of that role. I think there are 4 or 5 elements of first-time manager that comes into play, right? So one is you're playing an organizational role, like hey, you're trying to achieve an organizational goal, right? So that's a part of the role that you're playing as a first-time manager. You're playing a role in terms of having bringing a change, like action oriented role, like so you have a attribute characteristic of yourself that focuses on the action to bring the change. You have a characteristics of self reflection, like hey, how what do I need to do different? So that part always comes in your role as well. You play a role of providing the context to your team, like why we are doing it, be vocal about it, be expressive about it. And you're also playing a role of a leadership, pseudo leadership, if I can use the word, in terms of driving a collaboration, not just within your team, but outside of your team to be cross functional, right? So if you see that there's so many variables in that equation becomes complex in terms of measurement of a success criteria. Having said that, I would say there are few things I personally use, and there's no right or wrong answer. So this is what I personally use. I measure my teams and how they react to it, right? I think that is the most important for me, outside of everything else. Because if you don't have your team happy, business results will not be achieved. So I think one of the things that I personally use is every organization may have different things, but something like employee engagement score or a satisfaction score, right? So that's something that I give a lot of importance in terms of what score comes in either once in a year, twice a year, because that tells you a story and you have to be truthful about that story, what you're hearing as a feedback, because that's anonymous. I think that's something that's coming to you. I think that's one thing I would say. The other area where I think you should measure is not the individual performance, but the team performance against the goals, right? So it's not about the assessment of individual, it's actually assessment of the team. Companies have their OKRs, companies have the goals, like how far you have crossed. And that one statement of team performance brings a lot of variables into that equation as well, right? So it's like to achieve a team performance, a lot of things need to be right. So that's another major metrics I think I would say I would use. The other thing I will focus on measuring is the stakeholder satisfaction. Sometimes you can get great results, amazing OKRs, but people in the organization, on your peers or cross-functional teams hates you. That doesn't make any sense, right? So I think the stakeholder satisfaction, and stakeholder can be internal, external, doesn't matter. But I think that satisfaction and what rapport you create, what relationship you create, what vibe you generate out of that, I think that's important. And the last but not the least is the work-life balance, because that's a success measure as well. Because like when you get up every day in the morning, do you feel excited to work or you're dragging yourself to work, right? That kind of tells you like, hey, am I managing myself successfully? Am I doing the right thing that I need to do, and those kind of things. So I think those are 3-4 larger segments I would say is what you can look at to measure.
Right. Maitreyee, you want to add anything there?
Hemant has actually summed it up really well. My
Okay.
only point would be stakeholder management, where because they've moved from an IC to a role, I would think, and all stakeholders. So it would mean a team, it would mean cross-functional FTMs and other managers who they work with. It would be customers, and it would also be some of the other departments that typically would call you upon, now that you're a manager, would call you upon some organizational level duties, like for example, to be part of a committee. HR would call you to do something, or finance would call you to do something. So these are the other departments. So I would say 360-degree stakeholder feedback is one of the good ways, and I agree with Hemant, there's no real framework to measure it, but a good way is to have feedback from all these stakeholders to see how you're doing, as moving up that level.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think one of the leaders had mentioned this, how do we measure success of a manager? Like you mentioned, we don't measure happiness index or anything like that. But, the 3 key stakeholders to start with is your team, your customers, and your direct manager. If the happiness index has seen growth after you became an FTM in all these 3 stakeholders, you are doing well. as a FTM. The cross-functional teams that you mentioned, Maitreyee, I think those are signs of growth of the FTM.
Right.
Now I'm growing in my role, not only my
Absolutely.
own team, my own manager, and my own customers, but my peers and cross-functional teams also now are seeking my inputs on something. Is a sign of growth beyond even FTM probably, but
Correct.
that's the
I
path
agree.
to go to. Yeah, great. So I think some questions are already coming up, but people who are posting the questions, we will take all the questions you are posting, at around 4:45, which is about 10 to 15 minutes from now. Yeah. All right. Now I'll ask, I think Hemant has been complaining. I asked him too many questions. I'll ask Maitreyee. So Maitreyee, sometimes there are elements of or moments of self-doubt in the early days of FTM. Oh, I took this role, I'm in this role now, but I have self-doubt. Will I perform? Will I not perform? What will be your suggestion on handling these moments of self-doubt?
So I think this particular flavor of self-doubt is a part of any change that happens in our personal life, in our professional lives, in throughout the time, right? I mean, and the reason I keep comparing it also with personal lives is like I agree with you, Vibhas, like you rightly said, our work life and our personal life is not separate. It's part of one life. So I would say just like, I mean, sometimes we get, someone might get the jitters before like getting married. Someone might have the jitters before having a baby, like, okay, did I make the right decision? Now I'm like, locked for life. So it's a very similar thing. So any change in our lives actually brings about all these flavors, sometimes of excitement, sometimes of euphoria, sometimes of self-doubt, sometimes of, stress. It could be all of these kind of things. I think one of the biggest things, and again, there is no formula here, but I can share what worked for me, is self-reflection. And I think just sitting back, taking a step back rather than rushing into saying that, because self-doubt can get into it's a negative feeling. So if you sort of let it build, it can actually get into a more negative, it can be stressful, and it can really build into a very negative ball very quickly. So I would think whenever there is any kind of a negative thought, feeling, or a self-doubt, take one step back and reflect. That is, take one step back and just sit calmly and reflect. You don't, first of all, need to move forward. Reflect on why you are there, why you made this decision, why was it important to you at that point of time, what is important, what is in it for me right now at this point of time, and what the future looks like. I think it's very important to reflect on all these things. Number two is very important to look at the positives of what have happened in this role so far. So when in doubt, I think it's important to focus on the positives to see what are the positive outcomes that have already come from this role or from this transition.
Yeah.
And once you have that sort of an accounting balance to say, okay, these are the positives that have come, and yeah, probably there are a couple of negatives, because no one, goes into a change completely, with a rosy 100% positive stuff, right? But once you start looking at the positive, it helps you, one, deal with the negatives, and secondly, overcome the fear, or sometimes the self-doubt, the fear, or the anxiety that's coming along with this new change. It'll help you, deal with those fears or those anxieties and move ahead, because
Yeah.
now you have more positive thoughts. And
Absolutely.
another thing, so this is a lot to do with self. The other thing that I have also found works is sometimes collective wisdom. You
Mhm.
have peers, in the company, in these groups. Uh, it may help to not look at them as competitors, but to look at them as a peer group, as all of us are have moved into the role, and talk to them to see if they are facing the same problems. A lot of times, collective wisdom, where I'm facing something a similar, my friend who's also moved into a first time role could be facing the same problem or some other problem. I might have a solution for him and he might have a solution for me. So I
Absolutely.
think talking through these problems with your peer group also a lot of times has helped me. So these are the two things that have really helped me. One is self reflection, and second is collective wisdom, talking to the peer group.
Yeah.
If I can add to that, it's a great answer. I think there's no one formula as
Yeah.
much. And everyone has to learn this differently. It's a natural phenomena. The self doubt obviously comes in. There is no one in this world who will not kind of go through that scenario. I think the way I'll tell you the way I handle it. generally when you get to a self-doubt, it's because of a certain situation that you have not experienced before, right? Or you're getting into have a performance that doesn't feel satisfactory to you, or like it could, a lot of things could come in. But if you look at the underlying philosophy or the reason why it happens is because it's the ability to deal with the situations, and the situations can be different, will keep on changing, and the self-doubt will be different in different situations. But the ability to handle the situation is what you need to master in. I think the way I work with that is, and you will get better as you grow. So it's completely natural to have that self-doubt initially, and you will build on your confidence. I think the way I rationalize myself is I go in my history. I go in my how I have come here and what worked for me, right? Someone who was born in village, vernacular medium, like not enough financial backing, like you fought all the battles to get to where you are, right? And and if you relate it back, it was the ability to handle the situations. It was ability to fight back. It was ability to kind of have that resilience in you to kind of stand up, right? So that's what gives me confidence. It's like if I was able to do that stuff, this is much simpler, right? So it's just you convince yourself, you prepare your mind in a way where I can handle any situation, and once you get that confidence, the self doubt eventually goes away. So that's one thing I would kind of.
Great, Hemant. Yeah, and I think one of the things that is also said is you got promoted to this role because somebody thought you deserve it. So have faith in the person who promoted you, that they have some sense that they promoted you. If you have a self-doubt, they don't have a doubt about your abilities, otherwise they wouldn't have promoted you. And also my feeling is sometimes people think they have to be good at everything from the start. It is important to realize I may be already good at few things and I have things to learn on the way.
Right.
And that's perfectly all right, as you know, but I have confidence that I can learn. And I think we have to work on our strengths and remind ourselves that here are my 3 key strengths I'm going to play on. Yeah, these are the few areas I need to work on, and I'm going to do that. So yeah, great. What I'm going to ask you now is from your personal experiences. I mean, like Hemant mentioned, all of us have gone through this experience of being the first-time managers. What was your experience like? What worked well for you, and what were some areas where something could have happened better? I think both of you can share your experience when you transition into this role.
I'll go first. So my experience when I first became a manager, that was back in I think 2007. My daughter was born, so as a personal goal as well as this first time manager kind of a goal. Professionally, it was a very horrible experience.
Okay.
I had sleepless nights for almost a year. And Maitreyee, I think you're from more of a corporate talent function. I'm more from a delivery function. It's very different mindset, very different
Yes.
kind. My first year was horrible, sleepless nights, or not have enough sleep, and kind of continuously thinking about delivery, performance, why this is still a gap. Like it took me a while. It took me a while to understand that, I would say. And mainly because I think it's a transition of, hey, it's not an individual performance, it's a team performance, and your neck is on the line. That's how you start thinking, and you kind of take a extra pressure and stress on yourself. Also, the other area of my personal experience in my first year was the pursuit of excellence. So I was relatively a very high performer, and that's why you get promoted and things like that. And then your level of excellence and the pursuit of that excellence remains the same. And then you can't take how things laid out by the team. If it is not up to the mark, you stop delegating and you start working on it, right? So my first year was actually, the excellence is important. So it doesn't matter what happens on the ground. That's what I need to achieve. That was my reference point, right? So I think if I have to say the sleepless nights, because of the pressure that, hey, neck is on the line, pursuit of excellence kind of created a lot of issues for me in terms of like, hey, not able to delegate, but kind of do the work and things like that. So it was a horrible experience. Over a period of time, I learned a lot though. I think this is back to your point, Vibhas, that you're talking about the mentors and coaches. I think that's so important because they are the ones who kind of show you the way. And that's why I appreciate kind of you setting this meeting up. I think over a period of time, what was learned, what was the most important learning for me was importance of delegation. I think that is such a simple thing, but it takes a long to actually realize why it is important. And over a period of time, you understand what to delegate, who to delegate, how to delegate. Like you kind of learn on that aspect of delegation aspect. The other thing I would say that I learned in that 1 year of my struggle as a first-time manager is the empowering the team. The only way for me, my team, the company to be successful is making sure that the team is empowered. And that's why you need to start focusing on the team development. Focusing on the team development becomes more important, and which I learned in the first year. And I'm glad I learned those things in the first year because that became a base for my future journey. So empowering your team, but at the same time, being clear in terms of providing feedback and receiving feedback and recognizing your individuals as you're developing your team. So those are the couple of things I learned after my first year of not so good experience, but that was a great learning, I would say.
Awesome. Great. Maitreyee,
That's interesting. Yeah, for me, the journey was a little different. I was an introvert. I never really wanted to lead teams. So it was a battle for quite a few years where me and my manager would say, they would say, you're ready to lead a team now. And I would be like, no, let me just work as an IC. I just want to focus on my work and just that's it. I think, of course, it didn't go on for very long because end of the day, somewhere the manager felt I had the potential to do more. And if I were to do more and have a team under me and, groom them into doing the task that I was doing well, then I have to get into a role where I manage people. So I got into it, but in line with keeping with my sort of my nature, I continued being a little introvertish, did not invest that much in my team. And I think that is the first mistake I made, where I did not invest in my team. I felt that, okay, now I have a team. I need to let them know these are the tasks. I need to teach them correctly, was my thought. I need to teach them the tasks correctly and then I can delegate. What I completely missed in the first year really is building that trust, building relationships. So I continued to be an introvert. I continued just having very business transactions with the team, and which really, doesn't work if you're going to be a manager of a team. So I think the first year was a disaster. And I came out thinking that I was a good manager. So that's the other thing, right? How you feel that you're doing well, but you're not being perceived as a good manager. At the end of the first year, there was feedback from my team, there was feedback from stakeholders, and I was shown my report card. And that report card was, it was worse than I ever had in my school. And that was a time for me to reflect and say, see what I had done, how I had done, what I could do better, what I had done wrong. And I think that's when I really realized the first and the most important thing when you become that first time manager is to invest in your team, is to invest in all the stakeholders, because now you're no longer on your own. So I think after that, the journey has been really good, to the point where now I think it's not just investing time. And like Hemant rightly said, unless you invest in them, how are you going to develop them? How will you delegate unless you invest in them and make them really good players so that you can delegate more work to them? Everyone can grow. So these concepts started, I started internalizing these concepts. And I think to the point where now I really believe that wherever you are, whatever you do, but I think building those connections with the team members, I grew to such a point that I started knowing everything about my team. So I would know someone else, someone's context, and why they're performing, how they're performing, because something was happening back in their home. Someone was distracted because someone was ill at home. I started understanding all these nuances and how my team is performing because other things are impacting them. So building these relations, understanding their backgrounds, understanding their context in which they come to work every single day, those were very important for me. And once you have this team and the trust in the team and you stand up for the team, I think the team is ready to do wonders, not just for you, but as a team, as a whole for the company. So it was a tough journey for me, but in the end, I would say, I think I learned through the mistakes, but it was a beautiful journey.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks both for sharing these great insights. I think, as you said, we learn from mistakes sometimes more than what we learn from successes.
Right.
Yeah. And now one last question for both of you from our side. And I think then there are a lot of questions which have come from the audience. So this is like, if you were to kind of summarize one thing an FTM must do for success and one thing they must avoid, which is a derailer, what would be that one thing that you can recommend from both of you? And Maitreyee, you want to start, you can start. Yeah.
One thing that I think an FTM must do to be successful is invest in stakeholders.
Okay.
All of them, definitely. I think that's a big one.
Okay. And what can be a derailer if they...
I think the derailer can be self-doubt.
Okay.
I think it's very important to have faith in yourself and move on. So I think that derailer definitely can be self-doubt.
Great. And Hemant?
I would say one thing that you must do, and this is a little bit philosophical, but I think as a first-time manager, you need a identity needs to be clear and defined. And for that to happen, you have to start with the why. Anything that you do in the role, right? Be it a delivery of something or be it a driving an initiative, whatever it is. I think starting with why is a very important thing that you need to do, because that's going to give you clarity. That's going to give you conviction. That's what is going to give you enough of ammo to tell your teams on why we are doing it, how to do it, what's going to benefit this and those kind of things, right? So I think the first thing I would say, on top of everything that we talked about, team development, delegation, I think starting with why and having a clarity on the why is important. That's what I would say you must do. What you should avoid, I think it's after talking about the 1 year of horrible experiences, so rear view mirror is always clearer than the windshield. So from a rear view mirror, I would say what you should avoid is to be an IC again, right? You will fall into the trap of being an IC. I think that's what you need to avoid.
Great. So thank you both for such wonderful insights from your experience, rich experience. I think we have many questions which are there in the chat, and I think some may be addressed specifically to one of you, or we can take those questions. Hemant, I think I see a question that talks about the relationship part that you mentioned, building relationship. And it says, once you become manager, the people with whom you are working together, now they are reporting to you. So your colleagues' mentality changes from a colleague to a manager. How do you handle this? Like my peers became my direct reportees now. And how that? So this is a typical situation that happens.
So very interesting question. That's a great question, I would say. And we have gone through this scenario as well. I think the one thing that you need to understand in that situation, the dynamics involved is your peers are not clear on what the transition mean to them, right? They have a fear of unknown. Like, what does this mean? Because you know their strengths, you know their weaknesses. They know your strengths, they know your weaknesses, right? So it's like, how is this dynamics going to come together? And it's a fear of unknown. What's going to be different? That's what drives this whole aspect of dynamics that may become difficult to adjust. How to handle that? I would say, so when I went through such transitions, I think I've been very open to my peers. I think I gave everyone 3 questions to answer. Give them a week to come back, and I answered the same questions too. I think the first question was, you tell me how to make this transition smoother.
Okay.
The second question that I asked was, what changes do you think I need to bring in myself?
Okay.
And the third question that I asked was, what is one thing that you would like to change post this transition? And when you ask this kind of questions, you show your willingness, you show your openness for the change. You are making them part of the success of this transition. I think that's more important, and people appreciate that aspect of it. And when you ask questions about what do you want me to change in myself, that tells them saying, hey, it's the person is not going to be authoritative. It's something that he or she wants to be more inclusive in terms of that leadership through that change, right? So I think that's what I did. I think it worked for me. I don't know if it is the right answer, but that's my answer to you.
Great, great. I think that's, yeah, because this is a common dilemma, no? Everyone will face moment you want, because everyone cannot be promoted and one does get promoted. And it's a tough thing. But I think what you mentioned is a very practical thing to do and requires courage to do also. But it establishes that, I think, again, trust in you as a manager, and that the fear of unknown that you mentioned can be an obstacle in the relationship building, I think starts getting addressed, because now it's an open book, and we can start talking. I'm your manager, of course. I hold you accountable, but we work as human beings and as team members too. So great, great answer. Maitreyee, I'll ask you the next question that has come from the audience. Okay, this is, I think, competencies. What are the 4 or 5 top competencies required to be developed when transitioning from IC to a people manager? I think we addressed this during our conversation
We
quite
did,
a
yes.
lot. Like trust building, delegation. We talked about as
Interpersonal,
the
yeah,
connect with the
correct.
team.
Yes.
So that I think is already answered. How to prepare to move from IC to FTM role? Also, I think we have talked about the transition quite a lot. Will the present state environment you are in have an effect on the way you behave, act when you become a manager? So I think it is saying that, today I'm in a certain state or environment. When I'm an IC, now I become a manager. Does the environment in which I have worked as an IC impact you when you become a manager? Um,
I think it will impact, because end of the day, the environment is going to remain this. I mean, if you're in the same company, it's going to remain the same.
yes.
And that is the exact environment where you have grown and you have shown potential to become a first-time manager. So
Yes.
definitely it's going to continue to have an impact on your role as a first-time manager. And I think it's important, again, like I said, to always keep drawing from the strengths that have worked for you. So if that environment has worked for you and whatever in that has worked for you, keep drawing from there. And whatever has not worked for you, keep those aside and move on into the next phase, is how
Yeah.
I would say.
Yes, great. And my experience is also, many times, we are too dependent on environment and make ourselves weak in the process.
Right.
And, you tend to say, yeah, this is the environment, this is what is doing to me, versus saying, this is what I can do. And this is the environment I got. And like, as you mentioned, see the positive aspects of the environment and see what you can do and influence, rather than spending energy on what you cannot do. So I think environment impacts you, of course, but you have to make the best of the environment that you're in and work on the positives of the environment, as you mentioned. Yeah, that I think that's a great reply to this question. I think this is something about hybrid model, maintaining trust slash building relationship in hybrid model, where team members work in different locations. Please share your experience to keep them motivated and make a successful team. When team is distributed. And I think in these days, many of the IT companies, especially, it's a scenario is still a hybrid. Uh,
Yeah.
so how do you build the relationship? Any specific pointers there?
I mean, I can go here, and I think Hemant can also share, because this is a very practical, I think, problem which everyone has, and which is, I think it's a very relevant question for a first-time manager. I
Mhm.
think seasoned managers already have been there, done that, and they know what's working. I think it's very important, and which is why I said for first-time managers, the learning curve is really big. It's probably steeper than it is for the other levels.
Mhm.
First time managers will have to go that extra mile to do whatever it takes to build those relations. So in the hybrid mode, and I can give you a few examples of what I see now in my current company, the young first time managers doing, is that we actually have a remote working. We have not come back to work fully 100%. And the first time managers make an effort to, on their own, to get the team together once in a quarter, to be able to break the ice, to be able to know each other, to be able to assimilate new hires on the team into the team, to have a sense of common values by which they work. Because teams have their own ways of working, right? They establish certain standards, guidelines as they start working. For example, okay, as a team, we will do a 9 o'clock stand up. No, but you know what? I have this constraint, he has this constraint, she has this constraint. Why don't we do our regular stand up at 9:45? This will come about only when the team is aligned. such simple things, right? If the team doesn't know each other and there is no ice broken, then you will go as an FTM and say, we are going to do the morning stand up at 9. There is people with problems, people are not going to be able to make it. Then there are, frictions, conflicts, all of that. How does that work is when you come together, know each other. And I think we have to go that extra mile to bring our team together, to get the new hires assimilated into the team. So take the efforts in the hybrid mode to make those opportunities to come together, and get to know each other, build those relations, and then move forward. It's an extra step, but it has to be done.
The only thing I'll add to that is, so ours, just like Maitreyee said, ours is a work from home, remote work setup. So it's very similar problem. I think this is where the culture of the company becomes important. Because the culture of the company goes across, and that sets up the tone of how you are going to welcome the new joiner or the people who are going to work remotely, being inclusive, being transparent about things and things like that. So I think the culture is more the strategic play that answers this question. Um, Operationally, I would say is, I'll ask a different question. For building a trust and building a relationship, does the location play an important role? I don't think so. I think what plays important role is, are you genuinely believe or care for your team member to be successful? Do you genuinely think that that person need to be successful, and can you actually do something for that, and does the person actually see that action? It doesn't matter the location. You can have a face to face, but the person may not have faith in you, that you're not really caring for me or genuinely doing things for me to be successful, whereas you being remote. So I don't think the location part of building that relationship with trust makes a bigger difference. Obviously there's a practical challenges that brings in, but strategically and more importantly, the way you should be looking at it is, am I being genuine about building that relationship? Am I genuine about making that person successful? And that will always be seen. It doesn't matter what location.
Absolutely. So like Hemant, you mentioned also, first and foremost, I think we have a self-doubt again here. Like, oh, the person is not face to face. Will I be able to establish relationship, through a digital medium? Will it be as effective as face to face? Moment the doubt is in my mind, my ability to connect itself gets compromised because I have a self-doubt now. So I think we have to rise about that self-doubt here, that I'm so genuine in my heart that even if it is a different location, I'm able to connect. And like Maitreyee said, where possible, bringing that face-to-face connect, because end of the day, face-to-face connect has its energy, which cannot be through digital media, even if they are very sophisticated. And so once in a quarter, once in a month, once in 2 months, whatever works for organizations, I think trying to do that and making it happen, bringing that camaraderie is a great thing to do when possible, and have that genuineness in the heart and confidence in the heart that we can do it and we can connect even digitally, and so location is no problem, no bar. That's how it will. I think we are towards the end of our time, and it has been great talking to both of you. There are still some pending questions in the chat, but since we have run out of time, Ankita, is it okay if we receive those questions on our email ID and then we respond, through email? Is that possible to work, Ankita?
Yes, definitely we can do that.
Yeah, so let's, I think some of the questions we have responded to, and some are still, I think, unanswered. So all those people who have posted their questions, thank you so much for showing your interest, because questions are a great thing for learning, and that shows you are interested. We will reply to you. I can personally guarantee you that. So send those questions to us, and we will respond to them. They are there already there in the chat, so we can know. I think we have to just be able to track it to the email ID. To which we have to respond. Yeah. Maitreyee and Hemant, anything you want to say before closing? And again, I have to sincerely thank both of you for sharing your great experience. I'm sure that was a great, value add to all the people in the audience.
The last thing I would say is, it's going to be a continuous learning process. Don't fall into the trap of, I know everything, I don't need to change anything. Don't fall into the trap. I think the secret of this change is to focus all your energy not on fighting the old, but building the new. So focus on building the new as you kind of go through.
Yeah, I agree with Hemant, and have faith in yourself. That's all, and all the best.
All right. So we are good to close, and thank you all for joining and spending time with us, and look forward to interacting with you. Do not hesitate to get in touch with us in whatever any question you may have, any doubt you may have, anything you want us to do for you. We are there for you. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thanks for
Thank
that.
you.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Maitreyee.